Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Hello, girls, and welcome back to another episode of the Women's Fitness Academy's podcast. I'm your host, Siggy, one of the WFA's educators, a women's body image and health coach. Today, I'm chatting with the lovely Alexandra Totaro. Did I mention that right?
You did. Hi. And it's so funny because I only just changed my name to Totaro. It used to be Vasilopoulos. And I thought Vasilopoulos was the hard one.
Yeah.
But here we are struggling with Totaro.
It's so funny because I even wrote it down. I was just yeah, Totaro. And I was just and then I say it and I get my words mixed up. Anyway, girls, Alexandra is with me and she is the founder of the Bootcamp Co. For those who don't know what that is, it's a company based in Melbourne where they run boot camps, providing a space where plus size ladies feel included and celebrated from the moment they walk in, utilizing training techniques and structures to ensure no one is ever left out or feeling left behind or feeling less than anyone else. And Alexandra is here to join me to chat about how she combines her knowledge in business, fitness, and psychology to create a safe space in the fitness industry that is inclusive for all shapes, all sizes, and all abilities. Alexandra, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. What an intro. Thank you. It's always lovely to hear your own message out loud.
Yeah, isn't it? I love it. I love spitting out. And then my guests are like, oh, wow, yes, I do quite a bit. I'm like, yeah, you do. You're a powerful woman.
Yeah.
I want to start by asking you what got you into the boot camps.
Cool. Yeah. So I had been a trainer in the rental system. I was at uni studying business, and I was also working for a bootcamp company that did more bikini body bootcamp style of things. And I had such a disconnect between the people that I was working with one-on-one in the gym and then the people I was training for this other bootcamp company. And I just really fell in love with helping people go from 0 to 50, 0 to 80, 0 to 90, where it was they had never entered the industry and they were maybe scared to go into a gym or didn't feel comfortable, and you actually really helped them build that foundation. I found that so much more rewarding than helping people go to fit with abs or, that 10 to top 5% kind of things, which I feel like for a lot of trainers in the industry, that a lot of them want to work with the elite of the elite and the top 2%. Whereas I just found so much passion in working with people who were just entering the industry. And so very quickly with who I was working with outside of, or with my one-on-one staff, it was more of that obesity management, more plus size. And I really came down to very quickly realizing that it was a lot of the psychology behind what we were doing that was actually making a difference, not the physically getting there and doing the squats or doing the push-ups. Because at the end of the day, you can go anywhere and the exercise will work if you've got the mindset behind it. Yeah. So that's kind of then when I decided I wanted to run a bootcamp model, but specifically for the clientele of plus size, obesity management, inclusivity. I just found that, it needed a space in the fitness industry. There was nothing that was targeting that specific market and saying, hey, we are here for you guys, rather than here's a gym, here's a studio, you're more than welcome to come. But most of the time they felt like the odd one out, or they felt, okay, everyone else here is more advanced than me. And so we wanted to create a space that was specifically tailored for that client.
I love that. And since you've started it, you already have over 20 boot camps in Melbourne?
Yes, don't go there. We're nuts. So my husband and I started the boot camp. We just had one boot camp. I had one in Narre Warren, southeast suburbs in Melbourne. And that I was the head trainer. I ran it myself. And that was the women's only program. And then my husband, he was a myotherapist at the time and had his own clinics and worked for St Kilda Football Club. And he, as a myotherapist, he was seeing clients all day, and so was I, but in a just very different model. And he was like, I would love to try and do a men's version of what you're doing. And I was like, well, let's do it. So he opened up the men's bootcamp co and started working with that same clientele. And very quickly, we just found that it just grew to a point where we were like, okay, we've got two options here. We can either grow upward and open a gym, make it 300, 400, 500 members. But at the time, we were an outdoor boot camp with like 100 members, and being outdoors, to keep that model, you needed to expand laterally, which means like opening up more smaller communities in different areas with different trainers and opening and keeping the beauty of it, which is then what we decided to do at the end of 2019. Not the best time to expand a business, but we basically opened 5 locations at the end of 2019, all at once. And I really enjoy doing things large. Everyone around me was like, why don't you just open 1 more? And I was like, no, let's do 5. So I also really like the collaborative nature of it, because I find that when you've got multiple people opening up their boot camps at the same time, they learn off each other rather than just needing you to answer every question. They could put a question into our forum, and you would get different managers or different trainers being like, oh, what about this? What about that? I've done this. And it was like, well, this is awesome. It meant that if one person wrote a blog post and shared it with everyone else, 5 people, we've just now got 5 blog posts, and everyone had to do one aspect of that. So it became really collaborative. And then obviously we had lockdown. 2020, we opened 11 locations all at the same time, because we always open in the same month of the year. It's like leading into summer. And then the year after, we opened another 5 or 6. I don't know if my maths is correct, but anyway, now we've got 23, and we've only just had our first year in business without a lockdown. So now we're sort of at the point where we're like, all right, we've expanded our business, but we really want to get our message out as to what we do, why we do it. We're not looking at growing anymore right now. We're looking at really refining what we do and making sure people understand what this is in the fitness industry. And like, while that all sounds like smooth sailing, it definitely wasn't smooth. Obviously, when I say it like that, it's like, oh, we just opened and expanded. We've had locations close down, be unsuccessful. We've had to stop certain ones, open other ones. It hasn't been all, one smooth uphill, but yeah, there's definitely been a bit of a crazy last 3 years going from 1 location to 23. When from a head office point of view, it's just my husband, myself, and then our admin assistant, Kat.
I admire you so much opening up and letting our listeners know that it wasn't smooth sailing, especially by opening 5 new locations prior to COVID and lockdowns. And I can just imagine the stress that would have been, coming through the business, but also your partnership with your husband going, okay, well, we've just opened new locations. Like, how is this going to work? And I really want to open that conversation with you about, like, what did it look like behind the scenes for you when lockdown and, COVID came along, when you just opened new locations?
We actually had a really good business model for this, actually, because so the way, obviously with lockdown, being an outdoor boot camp as well, we did have a slight advantage in the sense that outdoor programs were allowed a lot earlier and later into the lockdown process. So it was really good in that sense. And also we didn't have any space restrictions. When you've got an oval, I don't have to worry about taping out, or here's my square boxes in the gym on the floor. We always had ample space. So we were really thankful for the outdoor model. And the other reason we originally loved the outdoor model is because our clientele generally don't feel comfortable in a gym setting. And that's just from years and years of the industry having stigma. Yeah. So the outdoor model really suits our clientele. And then it also really helped us over that COVID time. But each of our boot camps, they've got early morning and then evening classes. And each manager that runs a boot camp runs all of those classes. When it came to COVID lockdown, we overnight took everything to an online model. Yeah. But the good thing with that is because we had multiple locations, we as trainers were allowed to, we basically had a lot more classes, like a 9 a.m. and a midday and a 4 and a 7 p.m. But because we had so many coaches, we all just took one or two. And so our clients actually got access to more options than they would when they were in the outdoor model. They got access to more trainers. And as trainers, we actually worked less because we only had to take one or two Zooms between, the 5, 6, 7 of us. So it was like, as a business owner, I was so happy that I could keep every single one of my trainers employed throughout the entire lockdown. They still got their weekly income week in, week out. And like for us as business owners, that was just such a good feeling, knowing that I could actually keep someone's income running over that time. Because a lot of, especially sole traders or subcontractors, were just left with nada over that time.
I love that. It's so useful. And I remember the online space during COVID just went off. Everyone was on Zoom on a daily basis. So to be able to move your model and provide that service still for everyone is just amazing. And coming out of lockdown back to, the outdoor camps, I know it's usually like certain people have limiting beliefs around outdoor boot camps because of the weather, whether it's hot, whether it's cold. So I would love to know, like, how do you navigate this around your clients or people who are wanting to come on board and do the outdoor training, but they have those limiting beliefs around that?
Yeah, 100%. And this is where you do have to be smart as well about how you look for locations, where you're going to train clients and things like that. As a outdoor bootcamp company, we have 3 things that when we're looking for a location, we specifically go and scout for those 3 things before anything else. And this is going to sound so funny, but my husband and I always go around July, August, we find like the coldest, windiest, rainiest, darkest day. And we generally go, once the sun goes down, we get in the car, and that's when we scout our locations. Because if a location is good for when it's dark, cold, windy, and rainy, it's good every other time of the year. So what we look for, because we use council spaces, we use like outdoor reserves, parks, that sort of stuff. One thing that we look for is that there's ample parking and that it's not close to houses. Because when you're using like speakers and things like that, you're going to have a problem with neighboring houses if they're too close. That's one thing that we look for. The second thing is lighting. Does the reserve have adequate lighting that in those months, especially being in Melbourne, we have like it's the sun rises a lot later and falls a lot earlier, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's still dark at 6:30 a.m. So you need to make sure that it feels safe going there, that there's enough lights on at the reserve or at the pavilion, or that it's lit up. You don't want people to arrive feeling like, oh, this is a bit dark and dingy. So lighting is the second one. Cover is the third one. Is there adequate cover at this place where if it is raining or it is cold, that we can move to a covered space? Okay. And then fourth kind of one, we, over the winter months, we actually do move indoors. So all of our locations have partnering indoor facilities, whether it's scout halls, schools, bowls clubs, footy clubs. We have like an indoor space that we use over winter. So over those winter months, we know that we're definitely covered. And then over the summer months, it's kind of like, well, you're covered if it happens to rain here or there. So they're the kind of things that I would say if you are looking for an outdoor model, you need to have those things in mind. And then there's also the council aspect of it. Every city council operates differently. And so we have 23 different permits with 23 city councils, and it is nuts. So this is actually something I was having a meeting with AusActive the other day. They are actually working on, I don't know if I'm allowed to say, no, I'm allowed to say this, it's fine. They are working on getting permits so that if you're an AusActive member, you get your park permit for free through city councils. So they've already got a couple of city councils here in Melbourne on board with it, but they're trying to literally get every city council so that there's that benefit of like, hey, you don't have to do that. You're allowed to use the space just by being a personal trainer, which is really cool because we've got some city councils that currently are free and we've got other ones that want $20,000 a year. Yeah, so right. The range is insane. But it is something that you need to be really mindful of. And I think over COVID, that's where a lot of people just used whatever. But now coming back out of it, councils really are making sure that they've, that you've got your permits and that you are following those rules and things like that. So that's definitely something with that outdoor model.
I love that. And I love the fact that you gave everyone an idea of like what to look out for, because I remember when the lockdowns came out, I'm based in Melbourne as well. So I remember when all that happened, I was just like, God, like, how am I going to be able to train my clients out of the gym? And I just remember scouting for all these parks and reserves, and luckily ended up finding one. But at the time with the permits at the park, we didn't really need one. Well, I didn't. Whoops.
Over COVID, I don't feel like anyone needed one. Like everyone was understanding of like, you're just trying to make a living.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good, because I never went for it. My bad. But yeah, it's just, being able to obviously provide a service for your clients without the use of the gym, which is so vital. And like you said, a lot of the clients that come to you are the ones who feel intimidated or just don't feel comfortable going to the gym, which I think is very valuable, because again, the gym's not for everyone. So to give someone the option to train and enjoy exercise outside of a intimidating environment, it's so useful, because again, they're able to excel in their health in a different way.
Correct. And not everyone even understands some of the things that go on when people walk into a gym. They think, well, why is it intimidating? Even just having mirrors in front of you, for a lot of our clientele who suffer with body dysmorphia, being in front of a mirror and training can be really traumatic for them. And so by taking that away and being outdoors, I mean, we all need to spend more time outdoors in the fresh air. And while I love the business model of having TV screens because it allows you to be able to see your exercise, we spend all day looking at screens. I don't need to see more screens. So one of the benefits as well, I think, is for a lot of our members, they do have more sedentary jobs, and they tend to look at screens a lot. And so it's like, hey, here's a moment, here's 45 minutes to an hour where you are going to be outdoors, moving your body, not attached to technology. So it's not even just about working out. It's like, even if you're having a crap day and you can't do anything, just come, because there's all these other benefits. Yeah.
So true. I love that. When when new clients come on board, what are some of the things that hold them back from actually joining? Because I'm sure you would have come across a lot of people going, oh yeah, like I want to join a boot camp, but then they still feel sort of that limit of wanting to join.
Oh, 100%. And I think I have learned so much about the psychology of our members just from that initial phone call when they're inquiring. And I love when people can be really honest and open on the phone, but I also prompt that little bit more. Like I ask a little deeper as to why they didn't feel comfortable in the space that they were in last, or what. And I want to know those things so that I can explain to them how our program helps. And just some recent ones that I've conversations I've had. I had a lady that was saying, she was sort of asking me straight off the bat, do you guys do much partner exercises? And when someone asks a question, I think especially on an initial phone call or an initial consult, as a trainer, you don't know the intention behind the question. Do they want to know, is their partner exercise because they love partner exercises? Or do they want to know, is their partner exercises because they've been a little bit traumatized in the past around working with a partner and feeling as though they're holding that person back or feeling as though they're slower? So I think it's really important that when someone asks a question, if you're unsure of their intention, to ask further about it, and to know that you don't have to have all the answers until you've gathered enough information. So when someone says, do you guys do partner workouts? Instead of me just going, yeah, we do, of course, like it's so much fun, because that then might validate what they're thinking of, great, then this is not for me because I've had a really bad experience with that. It's about inquiring further. So, hey, do you guys do partner workouts? You can sort of ask them, have you done any partner workouts before? Why do you ask me that question? And just ask. They don't expect you to have all the answers. They are holding some stuff that is in their own head that they might not be putting out there. And that's when they might say something like, oh, I did this, boot camp in the past and I really loved the partner exercises. Great. Then you can go on and explain about the program and why you do it and how it's fun and all of that. But we've had a lot of people that ask that question for the latter reason, for I don't like working with other people because it makes me feel as though I'm holding the group back. And so when I've inquired and they've sort of explained that to me, then I can go in and explain some of our techniques specifically that we really use at bootcamp to keep it really inclusive. So when people inquire in this space, we love to explain to them things like running, right? I would never make everyone just run around an oval, yeah, because the person that's going to get back at the end is going to feel like, oh, I'm slower than everyone else and all of that. And I think for some people, they can think, well, how are you going to get around that? You know, running is people are going to be faster and people are going to be slower. For anyone, especially coaches that are listening right now, this is like my favorite running drill to do with people that are at all different levels. So you give every single person 2 cones and they basically put down the cone where they're starting. So everyone might be in a line, everyone puts down their cone. Then you put a timer on, depending how much space you've got, you might give them 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, however long. And you just say to the group, go at your own pace. You are going to go as far as you can in 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15, whatever it's going to be. You hit that timer, go. Everyone goes, and then you hit stop. Everyone puts their second cone down wherever they got to. So if they were quite fit and they sprinted, they might be 50 meters out. If they were injured and they could only walk, they might have only made it 10 meters in front. Everyone comes back and now we start the workout. So we might do a minute of squats. Everyone go for your run. Come back, everyone do a minute of push-ups. Everyone go for your run. Your run is still going to be hard for you, but everyone is at a different level, at a different pace. But the important part is that everyone gets back at the same time. So no one is really feeling like I'm holding the group back. I've just got my cone, you've got your cone, and that's because we have different strengths. So I really think that is just one example of a way that we can explain to people on the phone when they're worried about that sort of stuff. Hey, we do a lot more of this kind of stuff when it comes to running to make sure that no one is left behind. Same thing goes for squats, push-ups, all of that sort of stuff. We would always get people to do of an exercise rather than 30 reps so that they don't feel as though, again, they're falling behind. Everyone can work to 80% of their own, perceived rate in 30 seconds. One client might get 30 squats, one client might get 5 squats. And that's totally fine because we are starting and ending together. And I think as coaches, we can think all of this stuff in our head, but we can forget to communicate it to the clients when they're inquiring. And I think it's so important when someone is inquiring to let them know about the techniques that you use to make sure that they feel comfortable if that's their kind of sore spot.
Yeah, I love that, because running is, when we perceive running, a lot of people also hold themselves back from doing it because, like you said, they either think that they're going to hold their partners behind, or whatever the excuse is. And to be honest, like, some people don't even enjoy running. So, but once they take that on board, some of them do end up enjoying it. And I love the way that you go about it, because the competition is not against the other people around them. It's literally against yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny that you say about the partner stuff. I love stuff where it actually works better having different fitness levels partnered together. So, for example, if you're doing a workout where you've got someone who's a little bit fitter and someone who's less fit, for example, just being partnered together, if one of them is an isometric hold exercise and the other one is a rep-based or a distance-based workout, it actually works really well for them to be of opposite fitness levels. Because what happens is, let's say you've got a wall sit while someone else has to go for a jog or to a cone and back or something like that. If someone doesn't have a great fitness level, or they're a beginner, or they've got less strength, and then you've got someone who has got a better cardiovascular fitness level and more strength, if they're going to take longer to do that run, the person who has a higher strength can hold for longer.
Yeah.
And then vice versa, when the person with less strength can't hold for as long, their partner is going to be quicker. So it actually partners really well. And then you sort of think, well, how can I adjust for that without making anyone feel like, oh, I'm partnering you with you? And one thing that we really like to do in a setting like that is, let's say in part of the warm up, it might be like, great, I'm going to get everyone to do whatever exercise it might be. And then as they finish, you just number them off. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you've got 20 people. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1 partners with 1, 2 partners with 2, 3 partners with 3. So you end up having opposite fitness levels paired together if you know you're doing a style of workout that kind of needs that. So there is so many techniques. Like I need to write these all out because they're all in my head.
And I love the fact that you also mentioned about the different types of fitness, because too often what I've seen and what I've experienced myself is you would partner the stronger ones together and those who are not as strong on the other spectrum. But I love the way that you've gone about it, because when you have someone who's faster and someone who's a little bit slower, the combination of them together, again, depending on the exercise, complements them. And I think
Correct.
It pushes them a little bit, a little bit further mentally to know, oh, okay, well, next time if I did that, I'll know how much I'll be able to push next time.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. But it does take a lot of planning as well. Like you've got to think about, how am I going to implement this? When am I going to implement it? But it makes people feel a lot more comfortable and feel as though it's a more inclusive space when everyone can partner with everyone, because it is so obvious when you partner the 2 newest people with the lowest fitness level together, and then you partner the 2 people that have got the highest fitness level together. It does the opposite of what we talk about with inclusive fitness. It doesn't make everyone feel just as valued as everyone else, which is, why I really think structures like that are super important.
Yeah, 100%. And while we're talking about, structuring it a little bit different in terms of the clientele, we've gone a little bit more about the mindset side of things when, you have consults with clients. But I also wanted us to dive in a little bit deeper about certain limits that you may have come across as a coach and having to refer a client out because of the position that you're in. So I would love your perspective around like, how would you handle some limits with a client's mindset where you're like, cool, well, you come to a place where you find yourself not being able to help that client and you're having to refer them out.
100%. And I think this is where having that background in counseling myself like really helps, because you're aware of a lot of things as well. But in the industry, I think we so readily want to give advice. And we so readily want to help our clients, because it's why we entered into the industry. And it kind of comes back to what I was saying before about you don't have to have all the answers. And oftentimes you're also going to be really respected in the long term when you can know your own boundaries and know where you can give advice, where you can't give advice, and not just saying something for the sake of saying something. So for example, if you have a client that has maybe some mental health challenges, or you can see that their mindset isn't fantastic, and you might have tried certain techniques to try and help them like be a little bit more motivated. And like during the session, we're always trying to encourage people and make sure that they're having like a positive relationship with exercise. But there is clientele that even with all your efforts as a trainer, you can see that they're still not in a great mental headspace. And so there's 2 things that as trainers, I think we need to be really aware of. And that is, one, if you are going to have a conversation with someone, to make sure that it is a private conversation and that it is not in front of others. No one wants to feel as though you've brought something up in front of other people when it has to do with mindset. And I think this is just understanding that mindset for everyone comes from a different place. And if someone's not in a great headspace and you say something in front of a group, maybe about that, like, oh, come on, smile a little bit more, Jane. You might mean it with such good intentions. Yeah. But you have no idea where that client is at mentally. And if they're not in a great headspace and you've just said something that to them embarrasses them in front of the entire group, no matter what your intention was, that can be really traumatic for that client in the moment. So I think one thing is that if you do need to have a conversation with someone, make sure that it is private. So it could be after class, pulling them aside. You might message them so that you don't have to even pull them aside. So you don't have to have that conversation if other people are around, like, oh, hey, do you mind staying for a moment afterwards so I can have a chat? Even that in front of other people can be really harmful to someone's kind of like psyche if they're there's still 20 minutes left of the session, and now they're just wondering, well, what is it that I need to stay back for? So I think sometimes you just need to be really aware of that sort of privacy aspect and having those conversations where it is just you and that person. But then the second thing is that it's not always within your realm to help someone. And if you can do more harm than help if you don't know the way to help someone. So if someone is facing some mental health challenges, my first question to them always is, are you seeking any help for that?
Yeah.
You know, is there someone that you can talk to about that? And oftentimes there is. And sometimes it's just a reminder, great, have you had a chat with that person this week? No. Is that something that you want to do? Because when it comes to mental health, the person who needs help needs to want help. And you can't give advice unless you've been asked for that advice.
Yeah.
So my first thing is always, is there someone that you can talk to about that? Do you have like a professional or a counselor or even a friend that you can talk to? And then outside of that, let's say that they say they're struggling with anxiety and that there isn't anyone that they are speaking to, and you can then ask them, right? Not give them advice, but you can ask them, would you like me to help you with that? And then if they say yes, that doesn't mean you need to help them there and then. You can say, great, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go off and see and research some ways that maybe I can help you with that. And then I'll come back to you with that later this week. How does that sound for you? You haven't overstepped your boundary. You can then go and you can seek, there's so many resources that you can go and look for to go, how can I help this person? And then let's say that you've said to them that you'll get back to them on Friday. Come Friday, you haven't done anything about it. You still have a conversation with that person. Hey, I know I said I'd have that for you today. I've been really busy with other stuff this week. I still am going to get that to you. Okay. Rather than just not saying anything because you haven't done it yet. It's just acknowledging that if I gave them a time, that I'm going to at least acknowledge it even if I don't have it ready. So I think there's so much in that. But yeah, knowing when to give advice, not giving it unless you've been given the permission to give it. And then if it's outside of your realm, either being able to refer to someone or to be able to go and look at, you know, specific kind of resources that you can use to then help them. So unpack that however you want.
I love that. It's so true. And there's like plenty of resources out there as well. But too often people end up going on Google and trying to figure out whether they have the answers from Google. So I would love to know, like, what are some resources that have helped you aside from studying counseling that our listeners would be useful to, you know, find?
Yeah, I mean, we really love a lot of the advice that is on the Beyond Blue website. So Beyond Blue are obviously, their main thing is anxiety. And anxiety is the most prevalent mental health condition in Australia today. And so if you go on there, there is so much resources and so much knowledge that you can consume that whether you need it or not today will make you more aware of how to handle situations in the future. And I think understanding that the more that you can research it, the more you're going to realize how different every person's anxiety is. Yeah. So it's not just a matter of, oh, I've struggled with anxiety and I know how I manage it, so let me give you my techniques, because my anxiety is going to be dealt with in a completely different way to yours is. And so just being aware of different techniques and different, I guess, how different anxieties can come about will really help being able to talk about them, being able to hold space for someone and being able to get the correct techniques. But yeah, Beyond Blue is kind of like our go-to. Another one is the Obesity Collective. They've got some, if this is especially good for trainers who are unsure how to talk about weight with clients when they are sitting at a very unhealthy weight. Because especially at the moment in the fitness industry, we have a lot of body positivity. And I think that is really important. But at the same time, you need to be able to have those conversations where if someone is coming to you because they want to lose weight because it is going to be more beneficial for their cardiovascular health, for their joints, for their knees, you need to be able to speak about that without having a stigma attached to it. And the Obesity Collective have got some really great articles about weight stigma and how to talk about it, and the fact that, and I'm a big believer of this, that obesity is not an individual person's issue. Yeah, it is a societal problem that every single business, school, education sector, from fitness to clothing to restaurants, we all need to do our part to help reduce the obesity epidemic. It is not, I think a lot of people think that, if someone is suffering with obesity, well, that's because of their poor choices in life. No, they have been born into a society that fosters that environment. And so if you are a business owner, whether it's a sole trader or whether you own a big ass company, you need to make sure that you're doing what you can to reduce that stigma and to help aid people in that space. So there's a lot of information on there. I highly recommend. I think you can tag things below anyway. So
yeah, I love that. It's so useful. And like you said, it's also making ourselves understand as trainers when we do come across people who, are obese or are wanting to improve their lifestyle, is having those conversations with them without, without not having the knowledge around that. Because again, we're wanting to help as many people as possible, and having those resources are going to be so useful.
Yeah, definitely. And holding space for people when they are discussing hard topics is something that I think personal trainers really need to do a lot of work in. We can just be so agreeable or just go, yeah, I understand. And I think sometimes a lot of the practices that you learn in counseling can really help in personal training or being anything that's client facing, really. One technique that I use a lot, and this is really great whether you're face to face or whether you're on the phone with someone, because a lot of people do share a lot about their stories, and you have people that on day dot will tell you about illnesses that they have, or that they're suffering with cancer, or that they're suffering with depression, or people will open up and will kind of give you a lot of information. And one of the best things for you to do is to stay impartial. And what I mean by that is not agreeing necessarily, not saying oh yes, or yes, I understand, because some of that even can just be no, you don't. How women, a lot of the time we say I don't want you to solve my problem, I just want you to listen.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in counseling. You learn to just reframe what the person has told you. You just reframe it back to them. So if someone has told you that they have got 3 kids and they haven't exercised in 10 years because their life has been really chaotic, you can say, I can hear that you've been really busy, good on you. You've raised 3 beautiful children. It sounds like you're really ready to get back into something. I haven't asked a question. I have just retold you what you told me. And it allows them to go deeper and to talk more and to feel heard, not to feel well, great, here's my solution for you. So I think that's just really important. But that's a simple technique that we use. It's just listen to what the person is saying, and you have to listen. That's the important part. You really have to listen. And then just relay it back to them so that they know, I know what you just said. This is what you said. And they're yes. And they find it so fascinating that you've reframed it back to them, because that's exactly it. And you're yeah, I know, you just told me. But okay. Yeah.
And, with the psychology side of things, it just gives them the ability to feel more comfortable. And like you said, we're not giving them the advice straight away. We're literally just reframing what they've said to actually think about what they've said to us. And if it does make sense to them, then they'll start talking more about what they're wanting to change. And that's where their journey starts from there.
Correct. Yeah. And if what you've reframed back to them isn't quite what they wanted to say, they'll pick up on it as well.
Yeah.
So, when you say something like that example there of sounds like you've been really busy, with children, and that you haven't found time for you, that must have been really hard for you. They might, in that moment, hearing it back, go, well, actually, you know what it was? It was my divorce with my husband, and they realize that the story you just told them, that they just told you, isn't the full picture. And so then they kind of go that next level deeper, because hearing it back, it's kind of like what I said at the start of the podcast. I was oh, it's nice to hear my own story. It's the same thing. It's them hearing their own story back to them and being able to go, yes, is that my story? No, is it not? And what do I want to kind of move toward?
Yeah, I love everything about that. So fascinating. And it's so valuable as well for a lot of the women listening to our podcast, and also for coaches, just to have a better understanding of how to navigate those hard conversations with clients. Because as you mentioned, it's not just about us agreeing and putting our yes hat on to every time they say something to us. It's actually pulling them up on whether it's an excuse or whether it's a valid reason of what's happening in life, and helping them to navigate those changes.
Yeah. And one thing that I think I actually posted this out on Instagram the other day, that I was sort of saying that kind of part of inclusive fitness is not tolerating things like, you know, whether it's discrimination or whether it's excuses, and not tolerating that and standing up to that. But that doesn't mean calling people out in front of a group. You know, like there's such a clear distinction of, you might notice something, you know, whether it be an excuse or whatever, and instead of agreeing with it, you want to establish a relationship where you can discuss what you think is the underlying issue there, without then calling it an excuse or saying something in front of a group. One thing that like happens so often, and again, this is what I mean by the fitness industry has the best intentions. Like every trainer has such good intentions. You know, like the classic, someone is rocking up late to class, and let's say they rock up maybe quite often, quite late, and then you have a trainer have the best intentions. They just want to make make light of it. So they'll say something, oh, 5 minutes late, 5 burpees. I know you are so well intentioned by saying that. However, you have no idea why that person is late. Yeah. They could have just had a domestic with their partner, and they have still found the strength to rock up and do something for themselves for 45 minutes. They might be in the most fragile mental state. And then the first thing that has happened is they've been called out in front of the group. If someone's not in a good headspace, that can be so traumatic. And the reason why they choose to quit your gym, or the reason why they choose to never come back, is from that one moment. And in that moment, it might have been funny and humorous for everyone else, but you've really got to look at the person who it's directed at. And was that the right thing to do? Maybe you have a fantastic relationship with that person and you know that they can handle it, but we never know what someone can handle unless you know the context. And so if they've just walked in, we have like an absolutely no late burpees policy. And if it's happening often, again, have that private conversation outside of the session afterwards. Pull them to the side. You know, hey, I noticed that you are continually coming late, and I really want to make sure that you don't injure yourself and that you're getting a really good warm up. Is there a reason why you're late? Is there something I can do to help, you know, to get here on time? And if there's not, maybe I can give you some warm up exercise so you know what to do when you arrive. Again, putting it back to, I want to help you, but for me to be able to help you, you need to be able to help yourself. And so you put it back on them. Is there a reason for that? And then they have to explain it. It's not about excuses. It's just about communicating with them to go, these are the reasons why I want you to be here on time. How can we work with that?
Yeah, I love that. It's reframing it. And I love that you brought up that example, because that has personally happened to me once, where I got called out for being late. We're going back like years and years ago when I first started my journey, and it literally traumatized me, because I remember I had a really long day of work. I was working at corporate at the time, and it was just like a shitty day. And I got to the group class, and the trainer at the time was just calling me out, oh, you know, you're late, blah, blah. And everyone's like, oh, ha, ha, ha. And like, I felt so disheartened that I never came back to that class ever again. So it just shows you. Yeah.
There you go.
It just shows you. And it still goes. And as you said, like a lot of people have a really good intention by having a bit of a giggle and fun. We do need to be mindful of our language and how we perceive that to other people, because I've seen many trainers till today who do that. People will laugh about it, but you just don't know what's happening behind closed doors.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's so funny that you've had that experience and that you remember it 10 years later, you know, like
it's like
because we remember things. Anything that has an emotional attachment, we remember it. And it's funny because, like, for a restaurant, for example, if you go to a restaurant and you have one bad experience, you'll never go back to that restaurant.
Exactly.
You know, we need to really start thinking about our members. Doesn't matter that they're on a membership that comes out every single week. every experience is like every time they walk through the door, you need to revalidate their experience. It's not like, oh, they've been with me for 2-3 years, so they're good, you know? No. Everyone needs inclusivity is about treating every single person the same, whether they are brand new, whether they've been there for 3 years. You don't stop checking in with them because they've been there for 3 years. It's a matter of, I know that every single experience here is going to affect whether you want to stay here or not. And so I think that's a really important kind of reminder that, that's part of inclusivity.
Yeah, I love that. And what a way to finish today's conversation is for everyone to realize that language is important, being mindful of how we interact with our clients, but with people in general, you know, it's just being very, not why do I have honest in my head, but like being kind and being understanding of people's situations and not trying to, you know, make it all fun and games, because again, we just don't know where that person is coming from.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's funny because one of our values at Bootcamp Co is humor.
Yeah.
It's literally in our company values is humor. So we will like post things out on Instagram or even like an email I send out. I'm like, is there a dabble of humor in this? But when we teach our values to our trainers, we always go, humor is in our values, but it's never at anyone's expense. And I think that's like a really clean way of saying it when it comes to the communication of humor.
Yeah, I love that so much. Alexandra, thank you so much for joining me today. I know this conversation is going to help a lot of coaches out there, but women as well who are wanting to pursue their fitness and health outside of the gym. So for those who want to get more in contact with Alexandra herself or with the actual team, you can find them on the bootcampco.com.au. But don't worry, I'll have all the notes in the showcase area, so you guys can like have a click and like check out the Instagram and all of that. But yeah, besides that, Alexandra, again, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And if anyone listening to this wants to reach out to me personally, I absolutely love when people reach out and they tell me that they've heard something on one of my podcasts. Like, it just makes me want to spread the message more. So yeah, if anyone wants to reach out with me, I think I've already given you my Instagram. It's Alexandra Totaro, but feel free to message me or tag me or whatever. I just love hearing from people.
Love it. Well, girls, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure that you screenshot it, tag us at the Women's Fitness Academy, tag Alexandra, tag myself, and then till next time, let's pursue that fitness and health, whether it's in the gym or it's outdoors in boot camps.